I proposed 11 years ago, the weekend right after Valentine's Day in 2014. And before I get into the story and start off and really kick off episode one of the Lisa Lost podcast, I want to talk about how I even came to this position and why I decided to go ahead and create a podcast that's about relationships and really kind of building. This is just really one of three pillars that I want to really focus on. But for this podcast, this will be about relationships. I have another one that is for, weight loss hacks and entrepreneurship, and that's something for later. But the thing that I need to ask is, how did I get here? And the truth is, this is something that has been brewing for years. And when I started learning really female nature and understanding all the different stumbling blocks that I saw over the last 20 years of, my dating life, I figured, you know what? I come from a very unique background and a very unique, I guess, set of circumstances. When I see red pill type content and different dating and relationship videos on things like YouTube, I looked at it I'm like, I kind of come from the complete opposite spectrum of that. So I thought this would be interesting because there's a lot of people that are like me, I think, and have the background that I do. And so I wanted just to kind of set the context that this podcast is really about relationships, and it's not just about my experience and the things that I see and what was successful for me and also unsuccessful, but I find relationships to be incredibly fascinating. And these are things that I think we'll be talking about and kind of ironing out our entire life. So I thought it'd be fun to go ahead and do this and really kind of touch another part of the internet, with people who have more of a background like I do and are not looking for a short term. You're looking for a long term, satisfying relationship. Marriage, that's up for debate because of the laws and the evil that's going on. But the long term is kind of the goal, which it's not just about relationships. It's about really the couple pillars, which is your own health, your fitness, and your finances. Because if you don't have those things, the relationship, it can't last a long time anyway. You won't function. So that's what we're going to be focusing on. So 11 years ago, I proposed to my then became fiance the weekend after Valentine's Day. Now that morning, I kind of lucked out with it because that morning I met up with a bunch of people who went to breakfast after church. It was a church I was attending. I was in Texas at the time. And so when I got there, I met up with them early because I needed them to go ahead and mic me, get that all hooked up. I had a friend who worked with music videos, so he had equipment and access to it. And then there was another young woman that was a friend of both of us, and she was going to take still pictures. So what I did was I figured out a place that had a little waterfall and kind of set the scene, and I had the people who helped me there so we could get it all ready to go, them in position and just signals and things like that. And a lot of women that get engaged or married don't really understand the amount of hoops that I have to jump through to even get to that position, to even get to being engaged and wedding planning and all that. And a lot of them frankly, don't even appreciate it. But, everything from picking out the ring and shopping for that, because the ring situation for me was like 15 years in the making. I could not wait to finally have my bride that I can get a ring for and propose and just kind of do the whole thing. And that's why I had it filmed and everything and all of that. But so what I did was I went that morning and I got all mic'd up and hooked up, and then I drove back to pick her up, which she wasn't feeling that good, I guess. and bringing her back to the location to do the proposal. So we did that, and it's still in the top 5 of the most influential mountaintop experiences of my life, because from my background, but also as a man, I felt like that was a stepping stone in manhood, and it was one of the proudest moments of my entire life. And I thought that was pretty cool, and had it filmed and everything. What was neat too is that at the time I was working with copiers, so we were out one day for work, and I saw that they had these wide format printers, and I printed a couple pictures of me and her smiling, and it was great because you could put it on the wall. I gave one to her parents, and then we had one. And again, this was a long time ago, but I thought that was pretty cool, and it was pretty epic. And anyways, it didn't. I got all the way to about 3 months before the wedding, and different things came up, and it didn't work out in the end, which was really sad. And after about a decade of despair over it, I just kind of snapped out of it. I snapped out and thought, what am I doing? Like, how? It's one of those things where it was so traumatic of an event that it took really years to kind of, even deal with some of it. I started stuttering. I went from extreme extrovert to pretty heavy introvert. I had extreme anxiety, social anxiety like I've never had before. It was just it was destiny altering. Yeah. When you have a destiny altering event that takes place and derails you, like you don't even know where to begin. So anyways, I thought this would be very interesting to kind of go back and ask, okay, so it didn't work out. Would I recommend it again? Let me say this. I don't think that if I could go back, knowing what I know, in a perfect world, great. I'm glad it happened. I'm glad that I proposed. And the reason I say that is I've had to really dig deep for saying things that, to find gratitude. And because there's so much we have, but also you kind of forget about it. And I had a friend that died in a car wreck about 2 years ago now. And I thought to myself, I don't think he even got to propose ever. So I'm already blessed. I already got to experience what it's like to cross over in that way. And, I'm grateful for it. Now, if I could go back, would I do it again? No. I wish I could erase it, because part of the thing with, especially nowadays, we're in my opinion, a crisis, especially if you're a Christian. We are in a marriage crisis situation that, for some reason, I don't know why the pastors haven't addressed it in my almost 40 years of life. It's pretty disappointing with the marriage laws. But when I was proposing, I didn't know what I was doing. And that really just kind of sets the tone with my own background and how that, even comes about, and my views of marriage and how that has changed, because really it's almost the opposite of what I've spent my entire life believing. And so that's really what I want to get into next is, how do I view marriage? For me, I look at the level of the kind of the suffering from what happened. And when I got to the 10-year mark, and I think this is what really helped kind of push me out and kind of shake me out of this despair, was when I got to the 10-year mark, which had been a 10-year wedding anniversary. It's like, boy, it got real fast, The things that could happen in 10 years being together is kind of wild. And so that was just kind of a tough year, was the year 10. And then year 11, I started really going through just evaluating the past 20 years in all these areas, because I'm like I gotta be kind of one of those winners of the simple word, because I did a lot of that because I didn't understand really critical things about what I was getting into and about women. And that goes back, let's go back to, what are my views of marriage? My entire life, I believed that marriage was pretty straightforward. My parents were married all the way until my dad died, and that's another thing for another day. That also really helped me wake up and for me to see kind of that my destiny being completely gone when my dad died. It was like another shoe to drop for me, and dealing with that, realizing him and my mother won't even get to see me get married, and so that's been hard. But for me, marriage was something that was just a thing that you did, and it was also the crossing between having sex and not, because we were waiting for that, and I believe sex is for marriage, so you have that. So here we are, assuming that the right thing to do is get married. And for me, growing up, all my friends' parents were married. Divorce was incredibly rare. I don't even remember hanging out with anybody that their parents were divorced. There was a girl that liked me in high school at the very beginning of the whole dating thing, and her parents were divorced. And I remember seeing her, and her talking about going to dad's every other weekend. It's just like, no, that's lame. Divorce is lame. All that is lame. But the whole marriage thing today is just not what I expected. So for me, when I think of marriage, I pick somebody, I plan to be with them the rest of life. It goes back to when I was a little boy. I had always wanted to be married. I've never been afraid of women. I've never been, I had some nerves, I guess, when I was in 7th, 8th grade a little bit, but I was always interested in women. There was never a cooties epidemic or any kind of, I don't want to be close to them. No, I have older sisters, and they were tough, so it's not the same thing, but that was something we did. But one of the big things for me, and by the way, the prenup thing, that right there is completely changed, because I remember thinking for so long, until about the last couple years, I'm like, I will not sign a prenup. I will not do that. I won't dishonor God no matter what. I'm going to stay and stand firm. And I look at it now, knowing what I know today, and think, what a dumb thing to think and say. Because especially since my dad died, I started really thinking about these last couple years, thinking about the whole family structure and what's necessary, and kind of where we're at with that. And the reality is, between the government and the father, we got a problem. We have a government that is hell-bent on destroying the family. And what they want to do is they want to cut the legs out of the man. That way he struggles, and then transfer that money to the woman, and then they'll just exploit her. That's no problem. And then that way they can get access to the children. And so as a man, now I'm asking questions that I never even know I needed to ask. I started going down the rabbit hole of, which women would I want to watch my kids for 6 hours when I'm not around? Like, now we're talking about trust at these basic levels that I'd never even considered. Because, even all the way back from 11 years ago, dating today has changed dramatically. It used to be where you had the dating websites, but you didn't have the whole swiping, and you got rid of them within 2 seconds of seeing them. There wasn't that. You had profiles. It's changed, and I specifically seen the dating world shift heavily in 2018. But I've been following the whole dating and men and women for many years. And I remember back in the early 2000s, because I was a moron, I was watching I remember when The Bachelor first came out and me and my girlfriend were watching it. And I remember thinking to myself, this is not going to be good for the future, because I thought, and rightfully so, what this is going to do is it's going to further put women thinking that this is the type that they're going to go for. This is what you should go after. An older, wealthy, man. And the thing is, it's not about any of that. It's the conditioning. It's this idea and just stroking the ego, and has really divided men and women in ways we still don't fully understand. But it's been pretty detrimental for us as mate selection. So I remember seeing that come about, and then you fast forward and seeing the dress changes, and then you get to 50 Shades of Grey, and now that hit a whole new level, and the whole agenda is just to destroy the whole entire family. And so when I start seeing all that, at first I really kind of struggled, but I just realized when I was proposing, this is not at all what I had planned on. This is not at all what marriage is. By nature, I would marry someone, and yeah, of course I'll be with them for life. Yeah, of course I'll be faithful to them. Yeah, of course I'm going to do that because they're my wife. But it's more complicated than that. And that really takes me to a place after I was kind of starting to come out of the despair. I started seeing these things online with things like red pill content, and when you hear it, it's really insane. It really takes you back, because it's not at all how I grew up. And ever since 2018, but really 2020, my whole entire life, everything I know, a lot of it is just flipped upside down. So it's been a very overwhelming, going on 5 years now with that. But 2020 really was an eye-opener in so many ways. And I don't think people realize how much 2020 is affecting dating and marriage and all that. I mean, just the whole injection thing alone wiped out 80% of my potential candidates. Like if they got it done, it's no chance. We won't even date. We can't. It's a health problem. So that was kind of interesting. That felt like a nail in the coffin as far as marriage goes. It's like, well, who are we going to marry now? But that's a whole nother thing. But so I want to get into the red pill content. When I saw that, I don't know who I came across first. It might have been Fresh and Fit. There was Donovan Sharp. There was Kevin Samuels that they were referring to. And I started watching some of this, and yeah, it seemed crazy. You had Andrew Tate come out later. It seemed pretty intense, and it's just like, this is not at all what I believe. I don't see it this way, any of that. But as the couple years have gone by, as I start listening to it, and as I see people and learning about men getting ruined by their relationships and not seeing their kids and everything, this is so foreign to me. And the first thing to do is, push back against it and say, well, I'm still stuck in I will not sign a prenup. I'm going to honor God no matter what. If she leaves me, hey, that's my thing. You got more responsibility than that. You got children you're going to need to worry about. So that doesn't fly anymore. And one of the biggest things that I did not understand, and that's what really helped with the red pill, kind of understanding the female dynamics and how they move and everything. I look back over my life and think of all the simping I did, all of the wasted time and energy, and realizing probably one of the biggest things I've realized throughout all this is that women have no problem discarding you for the smallest things and whenever they feel like it. And that's really hard to understand, because for men, when I got engaged, I already planned my next 50 years. There was no hesitation. There was no, I'm gonna tough it out. But what I didn't realize, and this is probably the most important thing for me, especially related to my childhood, is the fact that I didn't understand that I I would consider myself somebody who comes from more of a kind of a male feminist, to be honest with you, always defending women. We're kind of brainwashed in church to be like that. And instead of seeing how things really are, instead of seeing how modern women really are and how to move correctly and how to protect yourself, your family, the government, what they are, what they do, and how they get involved in all this. These are things that are all foreign to me. I had no idea. I had nothing. I have two older sisters. One's been married 20 years. And I believe the other one would be married either 13 or 14 because I would be married almost 11. So maybe 12, 13 years they've been married and they all have kids. And I guarantee like neither of my sisters have prenups. Wouldn't even consider it. They don't, that's not what I come from. My family doesn't come from that. We don't even think about it. But the part that I missed that was the most important is that I'm the man. You could hear a lot of the things that I said is because I was the youngest. I have two older sisters and a mother that I'm surrounded by. And I used to say certain things, and now I realize the problem with what they're saying is that's not my situation because I will be marrying a woman. I'm the guy in this situation. So not being protected would be completely foolish on my part, not realizing. And again, when I was engaged, I never thought about any of this stuff, the prenup. The pastors never talked about this. We went through, started into premarital counseling, and shame on the pastor for what he said to me after the breakup. It was disgusting. But I'm just wondering, why aren't the pastors addressing the situation that we're facing today instead of treating men with just jokes all the time and belittling? Why don't you address the women? It's destroying our lives and our futures and our families. But that seems to be an off topic. And then when you talk about the marriage laws, I'm thinking to myself, where have I been? Why is it that I had so much resistance to it? And it's just the indoctrination of it, all of it. But I realized that I understood how to, socialize with women. I didn't have an issue with that, but it's the long term that's the missing piece. And I noticed no one seems to have an answer for the long term. The church doesn't have an answer. They do. The boomer generation, the long term for the church is let the mother run the entire family into the ground and abuse the husband and the man and run them into the ground. Because my mom did that. And it's not, again, about my mother, because I love my mom and my father. But I can look back and say the boomer generation did not work, and the stuff that they were doing is not good for the family as a whole. So with, reflecting on my dad and just kind of really getting that realization, because my dad, after my father died, my mom told me some stuff that my dad said no to for her with us kids. And he could have saved our lives. He could have saved our health. And it made me start to realize the father is a guardrail for the family. And he's also a guardrail for the wife. And it's extremely important that the father is always concerned for the entire family, making sure everyone's good and that they have that order in line. Because it's not just about him, it's about the children. And if the father does not stand up and step up and be there, and if necessary, tell the wife to stand down because she's ruining the family, he needs to do that because it's the safety of the children and the entire family. But what the church does is they ignore the things that have to do with accountability for the ladies, and then they're hard on the men for years. I can't remember one time in almost 40 years that a pastor has addressed it. It's usually generic terms with women, but boy, they have good jokes for men. They have good jokes that just continues the cultural decline. So for people like me that you didn't even question the marriage thing, you're like, yeah, of course I'm going to marry someone. And of course I'm going to take care of her. And of course I'm going to love her and protect her. And all of these things. not realizing what the modern world is really like and women in general. And I've dated a good amount of women, and I've women who served in church, and sometimes they're the worst, to be honest with you, because it's a it's just a different thing, and it's a different set of issues. But not saying I wouldn't date. I think that's the best if it works out. But the point is a lot of women, they just live like everyone else, and so it's really confusing for the man. Now, I want to transition into the struggle that men are having today in the dating world with modern women and what men don't understand. Now, I think the interesting thing with men today that I'm noticing is just the level of weakness. And again, I'm like an ex-male feminist and somewhat of a simp, a big simp, because I didn't hold the respect that I should have gotten, and instead I ran myself in the ground thinking I was just a terrible person and I should die, and it's just a confusing thing, and we just have these big gaps that we're just not addressing, and I think it's important that we do so, especially the marriage laws with the church. So, because I've read through the Bible all the way through in 2022, and I don't see anything in there that says you need to be married with the state and have them oppress you so that we can get access to your children and destroy the family. It's like, no, where are the pastors at? Come on. Why isn't anyone addressing this? But anyway, that's another thing. But with the men today, they just don't understand the move, which I didn't understand until more recent years, and also looking back, that women run off a different set of rules. They run off of a different set of values even, and goals. And a lot of men are just naive to it. And if you're a Christian man, you're really naive, because you're going to get, fully talked at, but you won't be defended when things hit the fan. I can assure you that you will be left out on your own, and you won't even get to the bottom of things because it's just too much. And we're in a very unique situation. But the thing that men are not understanding is, and this is something that I've started to learn a little bit more of, is women like and do what they want. And if a woman doesn't like you, trying to get her to like you, the more you do, it's just going to push her away. And instead, you need to be focusing on your things, and it'll draw her to you. So the thing with men is, whenever they're reaching out, at the end of the day, a woman that's interested in you, you'll know. She'll make it very apparent. And any guy, because you see that we're watering down what it takes to be a man in a relationship. And again, I have my own things that I'm sorting through, but I'm getting into the right direction. And I just want to help save you guys that are in your 20s and 30s to not waste the time and to not suffer like I have, because this whole journey is trying to figure out, like, why am I suffering so much? Why am I suffering? It's because of these ingrained date to marry. It has to work out. You're waiting till marriage. So then you got all this tension too, and the stress is out of control. Whereas most people can't even fathom the idea of not having sex before marriage. And so we got that whole issue, and which multiplies everything by 10, by the way. And when you're going through all this and then you're seeing stuff, it's easy to push back on it because you're realizing that doesn't work. What men need to understand is that you need to focus on you and building you and getting in position to be able to take care of the entire family. So that's really, really, really important. And you see a lot of things online with people doing approaching. Let's talk about approaching. I don't cold approach, and it's not because I'm afraid to or anything. I've calculated it, and it's just not worth the squeeze in a lot of ways. But for me, if a woman's really interested, she'll make herself known. She will invade your space. She will hover over. Women will bend over backwards to get to you if they're interested. They will bang down your door, and that's what you want. You want a woman who really has a true, genuine desire for you. And what a lot of guys miss, and what I missed too, because when I got engaged, I'm like, oh, okay, well, I did that. Now I can focus on, the next 50 years. But it doesn't work that way because they have their emotions, and it's like there's this dance to it where, they're like three-pronged. You're just one-pronged. You do this, it equals this. Them, you may have to do this, this, and this in a certain way to get this result. So you have to understand the different features that they have. It's not just, they hear things different, they process things different, they feel totally different. We run more on logic, they run more on emotion, and it's just one of those things that you have to suffer enough, I think, as a man, and you finally have to just come to the end of yourself. Like I did the last couple years. I'm like, well, what I did, it didn't give me the long term. It gave me a few year relationship type stuff, but how do we solve the long term? And what do we do in today's world with the modern women and men and the situation with the families and the inflation and all that? And that's why I really wanted to focus on kind of the back end, which is your fitness, your health, getting your finances in order, starting an online business. Because if you can get those things going, and it'll help fuel your confidence, now all of a sudden your relationships become easier and you're a better candidate for what you're searching for. So that's definitely my recommendation, and why we, with Residually Fit, are sponsoring this podcast. And I think it's just really important that, people understand, and men understand today, that we're just on different playing fields, and you need to be aware of what's out there and how men and women move today. And one of the best words of advice that I've heard in the last few years is, don't pay attention to what women say. Look at what they do, because quite often they'll tell you something and do the complete opposite because it's not completely thought through, or they're just communicating in a different way, or they're not telling the truth. But you got to be aware of certain things and certain behaviors, so that way you know what you're getting into. So that's what I got for you guys. If you haven't gone through the Hacks series, it's going to be the first link in the description. I would start there and focus on the back end, and then it's going to make your relationships easier because we're looking for the long term. We're not trying to do just basic stuff and have a year relationship, or just, a quick relationship. We want the long-term relationship and give you the chance. And you got to get your finances in order, and you need to get your health in order. But I would start with health. We got summer coming up, so I have something special for you. So again, first link in the description. Go through that. It's free. And we'll catch you guys on the next episode.